Okay, to be completely transparent, I'm not really in the academic field. So this research that I did was for my Master in Internal Communication Management dissertation. So, but I think it would be relevant for internal communicators, DEI leaders, as well as maybe HR professionals. I think I'll just move on because the rest, I will cover all this later. So the agenda today, I will cover how I arrived at my topic, the background of the organization where I did this research, a little bit about the sample group, the findings that came out of this research and what my recommendations are. And I hope at the end of the presentation, you will walk away with a little bit of guidance on how you can foster neuroinclusion in the workplace. So how I came to this topic, so a little bit about myself first, when you look at that Venn diagram on the right. So it's an intersection of internal communication, which has to do with my studies, neurodiversity, and line managers. So I'm a communication generalist with about 18 plus years in the field of communications. I'm also a mom to a neurodivergent teenager who would be joining the workforce in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years time. So I really hope that by then, organizations are ready for neurodivergent individuals like him. So that's my personal investment in wanting to advance neuroinclusion in workplaces. Let me see if I missed anything. Okay, and why through the lens of line managers? That's because they are so that's got to do with a little bit about psychological safety as well. They are the first point of contact for employees, and they are key to fostering an employee sense of belonging. Yet studies show that line managers do not feel capable of supporting neurodivergent individuals. And they are actually not getting the support they need from organizations. This is research by Doyle. I think she was the keynote from last year or year before, but quite, I think you all know her. And yeah, sorry, too fast. And I wanted to explore how internal communication can support line managers in fostering neuroinclusion. So a little bit of side note, I think that was also discussed in the chat. There's a new report that was published by the Institute of Internal Communication, and it said that internal communication priorities are shifting away from DEI. So 1 out of 10 internal communicators mentioned that they are doing less DEI communication in organizations. So I think, was it somebody mentioned that, yeah, companies are cutting back on new inclusion in general. And yeah, I think that is a concern. But yeah, it's free, download it if you want, Internal Institute of Internal Communication. So a little bit of background of the organization where I did this research. It is a global service-oriented company in the environmental services sector. They depend on their human capital for growth, and they have a large STEM workforce. The company has a DEI policy, but little attention to neurodiversity. There was also an article on MIT Sloan that mentioned only 1 in 10 organizations globally include neuroinclusion in their DEI agenda. So, you can see there's a lot that organizations can do, or more organizations can join in. So for this organization, focus on neuroinclusion presents an opportunity to benefit from, increased innovation, productivity, and competitive advantage, which research has shown. Next. this is a little bit about the sample group. It was a qualitative study to explore the lived experiences of line managers leading neurodiverse teams through semi-structured interviews. Just to clarify on the definition of neurodiversity, I used the definition by Judy Singer, and which includes the full range of human brain function, neurotypical as well as neurodivergent. I see Daniel has a question. Yes, please.
Yes, sweet. Sorry.
Jump in.
I don't need a definition of neurodiversity. I need a definition of what's a line manager. Please help me out on that.
Oh, line manager. Okay, basically, that's a good one. Sorry, I forgot to. Sometimes I have it, I know everything in my head, but I'm not thinking about whether the audience understands it. So please jump in and ask anyone. So basically, people managers, people who are managing people. And in this case, they are people managers who are managing one or more neurodivergent individual in their team. So that was the criteria for the line managers whom I interviewed. Does that answer your question?
Partially. My question, yes, and the follow-up question would be, what is a line manager? Like, what's the doing?
So they are people who manage other people.
That's the
in
definition.
short.
Like,
yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. So people, yeah. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so neurodiversity. So I interviewed 8 line managers across the UK and the Netherlands and across 2 divisions. And that includes also men and women. And you can see in the, in the table, how do you say, the number represents the number of persons. But they do not correlate to each other. So, the 3 persons in the UK are not from the same division, for example. I hope that's clear. So the experience of the line managers who are managing neurodivergent individuals, they range from a few months to 7 years. Most of them are managing neurodivergent teams for about a year. The roles of the neurodivergent individuals in this sample group that the line managers were managing, they range from highly technical roles like auditors and chemists to finance and administrative roles. And there were 2 senior managers who directly as well as indirectly manage neurodivergent individuals. And and 2 managers had some prior training in coaching people with neurodiversities. Yeah. As you can see, it's quite a broad group. The number wasn't huge because they were not easy to find. There was a lack of data in the organization, and HR did not have a record of neurodivergent employees, which I understand is quite an issue across organizations. But I understand also that there is a way to ask that is legal. I mean, at least in the Netherlands, I know that you're legally not allowed to ask if someone has disabilities, but there is a way to ask it where it is where you're very clear that it's a voluntary disclosure. So there's a way around it, and I think something interesting for organizations to take note of. Okay, so I think this is it. I will go to the next slide. So just let's see how much time I have. Quickly to the key findings, I split this to 2 slides. One are challenges that line managers face, and the next slide I will share what the support needs are for line managers. So the good news is that most line managers are already deploying inclusive approaches. They are empathetic, patient, flexible. They practice active listening, 2-way communication, and one-on-one check-ins, which is actually has to do with psychological safety as well. These are, yeah. I see Stephen nodding. But okay, unfortunately, the line managers did not feel confident at first when they first had a neurodivergent individual in their team, because there was little to no formal support and guidance, and they were left to their own devices to manage a neurodiverse team. There were no support in terms of policy, access to reasonable adjustments, or simply, just how to manage a neurodiverse team. So thirdly, there was the lack of disclosure was a challenge. At the time of the interviews, there were 2 line managers managing conflict within the teams. One example was that the neurodivergent individual disclosed to the line manager, but that was not shared amongst the team. And the team had some hurtful comments, things like, why is she not working in a normal way? So there is some discrimination there, especially if you don't disclose. I'm not saying that you have to disclose. I think there is a fine line there when it's safe and when it's not. So this is just from the line manager's point of view. So and yeah, indeed, line managers believe that disclosure would help their co-workers better understand their neurodivergent colleagues. So lastly, they often have to act as a buffer between neurodivergent individuals and co-workers. And that is also in teams where the neurodivergent individual have disclosed their neurodivergence. Line managers still needed to act as a buffer in day-to-day operations. Okay. So next one. So the support needs. Line managers voice the need for awareness about neurodiversity in organization, open dialogue, training and guidance, as well as structural support. And during the interviews, it appeared to me that these areas they identified are kind of connected. So you see this diagram on the right with little bubbles. So, all the different dimensions seem to influence other areas. For example, open dialogue has an influence on disclosure, and that enables better understanding of neurodiversity, and with better understanding, people are more likely to talk openly about it. So they kind of form an ecosystem, and it seemed that all these parts needed to exist at the same time to enable neuroinclusion in this company, which gave me the idea that neuroinclusion requires a comprehensive approach, that all these have to exist. So which led me to develop a framework as a guide, for internal communicators to help foster neuroinclusion. I call it ABLE, which is awareness, bilateral talks, which is fancy word for open dialogue, leadership and structural support, and education, which is essentially training and guidance. So just to take a deeper dive into each pillar. So on awareness about neurodiversity, almost all managers thought that awareness about neurodiversity is a key factor for neuroinclusion, but it was sadly lacking in this organization. And this is also supported by research. It showed that awareness is lacking in organizations. I think that was also by Doyle, done by Birkbeck University. But however, awareness campaigns are effective in helping to understand neurodiversity, which also mitigates discrimination and stigma and helps to create an open and supportive culture. So the next pillar, which is bilateral talks, open dialogue. In my research, line managers across the board identified open dialogue about neurodiversity as an important factor for neuroinclusion. So in teams where individuals had disclosed their neurodivergence, they appeared to cope better with conflicts because they could talk about it openly. So in one team, the neurodivergent individual was very open to the team, and they were able to discuss how to best work with each other, for example. And the studies also show that disclosure can help people understand and create an atmosphere of acceptance in the workplace and help mitigate social conflict. And one study found that dialogue across all levels of the organization is needed to foster a truly inclusive working environment. And this is where leaders need to come in to show support for neuroinclusion. So which brings me to the next pillar, which is leadership and structural support. So even though most of the line managers interviewed had the support of their own managers, some felt that it would help if senior leaders talked about it and they modeled inclusion. Line managers also voiced the lack of clear support, which means that, structural support is needed, especially, policies, resources, and guidance. So what studies have shown is that many managers do not know how to support neurodivergent employees. Yeah. And they actually often turn to the internet for information, which is, not always the best comprehensive source there is, which means formal policies and practices and commitment from leaders is needed to create awareness about neurodiversity. So in the last pillar, which is education, so in my research, the line managers felt they needed training and guidance to manage neurodiverse teams, but specifically external training from experts, not stuff you get online, because they wanted a more immersive and interactive type of training. And notably, the two line managers who had some form of training were able to enable trust and a sense of inclusion. They just, they knew what to expect. They knew that it was not going to be easy, and they knew how to manage a neurodiverse team. And they both expressed that they had the trust of the neurodivergent individual, and that the individual is, he's just accepted, he or she, both, they were just accepted as part of the team. So experts say that training is important for promoting neurodiversity at work. And to effectively support line managers, organizations need to equip them with training and guidance on inclusive practices. Also to educate employees about neurodiversity, specifically that all brains function differently to mitigate the discrimination. So to wrap up, I hope this provides some guidance to internal communicators, DEI leaders, and HR professionals to promote neuroinclusion in their workplace. It might seem like there's a lot of work to be done, but and at the end of her book, Ludmila Praslova, who's going to be your keynote speaker for NDD Pride Day, she said that change doesn't have to happen all at once. We can start, where we are, with whatever resources we have, and that collectively we can make the awareness happen. So very similar, to the positive message that Stephen sent. And I think we can just do our little bit, to promote it. And that's the end of my presentation. I don't know. Are there any questions? Do we have time for questions?
We still have 3 minutes. We could.
Okay, 2 minutes. Stephen.
Okay, well,
you raised your hand.
first about your last quote. there's another quote: if you have to walk 3,000 miles, you always start with the first step. I think that came from.
Yes, I heard that as well.
I think that came from China.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Something about the Great Wall.
I'd like to address two major issues. First is the question, can I ask? Is it legally allowed? The second one is how to deal with stigmas. And I may have a suggestion that if you are a manager and if you talk to people, you don't ask, are you autistic or do you have autism? But if you have autistic features like autism, what does it mean for you? What does it mean for the work that you do? What do you need? What are your qualities? So you don't talk about autism, you talk about the person with autism and the specific personal needs. Like you talk with all other people, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, you talk about their needs and their qualities. And they are all part of the entire equation in the organization.
Yes.
So if the next step as a leader, manager, you ask this person, well, thank you for confiding, for telling me, for your confidence. Now, how can I help you telling this to your colleagues in the group? You don't have to tell them you have ADHD for fear of stigmatization, but you tell them that you may be distracted from time to time or impulsive, you may interrupt. And it's not because you're bad or you don't respect, but your mind is so fast, running faster than the average. So it may be a burden. At the same time, it may give new ideas to the group, it may bring new dynamics. And this is just one small example of ADHD. With autism or OCD, you may have different examples. So you first take away the word, that may and that you take away the word that may provoke stigma, and help people and help groups. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And that is something that could be, for example, included in the training for line managers, because at the moment, the line managers have no idea how to even approach it when they have a neurodivergent individual in their team. And oftentimes, if you ask the neurodivergent individual, they don't want to disclose because they already feel stigmatized. I think, what's the number here? 3 out of 10 do not, or 4 out of 10 do not disclose because something like that. So I think the onus should be on the organization to provide the tools for line managers to manage these people in such a way, like, like what you mentioned, what you suggested, to provide that psychological safety for neurodivergent individuals, and that could be a way to do it, not having to put a label on things and just say, hey, I just need a little bit more time to process, or I need the agenda in advance, stuff like that.
Okay.
Daniel, if it's a quick one. Sorry, you're muted still.
Okay, sweet. It's not a question, actually. It's a note again. So I experienced this as I call this the double language barrier problem. Because when you outsource the conversation to keep it like natural and don't make them out themselves, you rely on a society that lacks sufficient social knowledge and routines to deal with that and accept that there are neurodivergent individuals who have differences in language and speech patterns and blah blah blah. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is those unaware people. Remember, they're like at least 1 out of 5 people in the room is neurodivergent without them knowing. So there might be subconscious patterns of rejection, of not wanting to have the other person speak out their truth because they're reminded that they have to suppress their own truth. So that's like a two-layered problem. And I think just discussing this in a DEI context is a way not enough. Sweet.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why awareness is so important, especially in the organizations, because we work with each other, and that's where a lot of conflict begins.
And in their
And
families. Like it's
yes,
yeah, right.
yeah, but usually I think within the family, if you have someone who is neurodivergent, you do know a little bit. Whereas where you're in a work environment, if you have no if you don't know any neurodivergent individuals, you don't have that knowledge of how, and yeah, I find, you need to equip people with the language, and the understanding to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you showed some language models or patterns. I also developed a neurobilingual translation tool. So maybe we exchange LinkedIn or whatever context and have a conversation on that.
Cool.
Sweet.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you.